Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a look at the world of philanthropy, but not the kind of philanthropy you're probably used to.
Right.
Today, we are going to be going through the life of Chuck Feeney. This is a guy who built a multi-billion-dollar business and then, get this, gave it all away,
All of it.
anonymously.
Wow. I got to ask, how does someone even go about doing that?
Well, I'm glad you asked because that is exactly what we are going to unpack today.
Sounds good.
Our guide for this deep dive is a biography by Conor. The book is called The Billionaire Who Wasn't.
Just the title itself, it's pretty intriguing, right? You get the sense that this guy, Feeney, was anything but ordinary.
Yeah, it definitely sets the stage for an unconventional story.
Definitely, for sure. And the book takes us through Feeney's journey, starting with the creation of duty-free shoppers.
Better known as DFS.
Yes, DFS. Now imagine a world before online shopping, a time when international travelers were like, your captive audience.
Because they had to go to the duty-free shop, right?
Exactly.
Had to.
Feeney saw that opportunity, and he built a retail empire catering to, well, basically their every desire, every luxury desire.
So this guy's sitting on top of this incredible fortune, right? But instead of just indulging in all the things you think of when you hear billionaire, like mansions and yachts,
Right.
he decides to create the Atlantic Foundation.
Okay.
Now, this wasn't your typical philanthropic foundation. It was like shrouded in secrecy. O'Cleary makes it clear that Feeney was, I don't know how else to say it, but obsessed with being anonymous. He wanted to give his wealth away without anyone knowing it was him.
I mean, that's wild. It really makes you think about the whole idea of philanthropy, right? Is it about actually making a difference, or is it more about the recognition you get for doing it?
It's such a good question. And, the things Feeney did to stay under the radar, they're mind-blowing.
Truly.
He used code names for projects, told his staff to never, ever mention his name, and he just, completely avoided the media.
Yeah.
Imagine building this hugely successful business and then choosing to, disappear from public view.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what we see today with a lot of philanthropy, right? It's more about, who's giving the most, who's getting their name on the building.
Totally.
But Feeney's approach, it really makes you wonder, could it actually be more impactful this way? By staying anonymous, he could just focus on the causes without all the distractions of, fame or public image.
Absolutely. And his early projects, they really give us a window into what he valued. One of his first big recipients was his alma mater, Cornell University.
Okay.
But O'Cleary points out, Feeney wasn't just, signing checks. He was seriously involved in every project he supported.
Yeah.
He brought this whole business mindset to philanthropy.
So he was hands-on, even with his giving. Interesting. What else?
Well, he was super meticulous about everything. He really wanted to see results, tangible outcomes. And he wanted to make sure that every single dollar was being used well, efficiently.
He sounds very detail-oriented.
Oh, yeah. And get this, he would show up unannounced at project sites just to, check on the progress.
Wow. Talk about hands-on. So it sounds like Cornell was just the beginning for him. Where did he go from there?
Well, his attention shifted to Ireland, specifically their higher education system, which was struggling at the time.
I see.
And this is where things get really fascinating. Feeney saw a chance to make a real difference, a long-lasting impact. And he went at it with that same, strategic thinking that he used in business.
I can see that.
He started by, identifying promising leaders, institutions that he thought had potential. And he would kind of quietly encourage them to think bigger, to aim higher.
Because he was like a secret mentor, pushing these institutions towards a better future.
Yeah, almost like a hidden hand guiding them. And it was all done in secret. O'Cleary says that even high-ranking government officials had no idea how involved Feeney really was.
No idea.
Yeah, that's how secretive he was. But the impact, you can't deny it. His funding helped modernize Irish universities. It attracted top talent. And, it's been argued that it really helped set the stage for the economic growth that Ireland experienced later on. It's pretty amazing to think that one person could, shift the direction of a whole country.
Yeah, it is. So he was making waves in education, but was that all he was involved in?
Well, his work in Ireland wasn't limited to just education. He also played a crucial role, a risky one, I should say, in the Northern Ireland peace process. And this was during some really intense times, a lot of conflict.
Wow. So he wasn't afraid to get involved in some really complex, even dangerous situations?
Not at all.
Yeah.
He joined this group of Irish-American amateur envoys. They were working behind the scenes, trying to bring an end to the violence. But, this wasn't just about donating money. Feeney was actively part of the negotiations. He was meeting with leaders on both sides of the conflict.
I bet that took a lot of courage, especially back then.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
And O'Clery highlights this one fascinating detail. Feeney was willing to engage with people that a lot of governments considered, controversial. Like, he even met with Jerry Adams.
who was Jerry Adams?
Oh, he was the leader of Sinn Féin.
He's insane.
Yeah, the political arm of the IRA.
Ah, I see.
Feeney knew the risks, but he felt strongly that that peace could only happen if everyone was talking, even those considered, unacceptable by others.
That's a really powerful message. He was willing to cross those lines to talk to anyone if it meant moving closer to peace.
Exactly. And he didn't just talk. He provided funding for a Sinn Féin office in Washington, D.C. And he actually played a role in helping secure an IRA ceasefire.
So he was like a behind-the-scenes operator, using his influence not for himself, but to try and make things better for everyone.
Exactly. But this whole clandestine way of operating, it couldn't last forever.
Oh, why is that? What happened?
A big turning point came when Feeney made the decision to sell his stake in DFS.
His stake in DFS.
He wanted to pour even more resources into his philanthropic work. And this is what brought him out into the open.
So the sale of DFS is what forced him to go public with all his philanthropy.
That's right.
Wow. After all those years of keeping everything secret, that must have been quite a shift for him.
I can't even imagine. But, the sale itself, it was this whole complicated thing. O'Clery talks about all these intense negotiations, multiple parties involved. And in the end, it was Bernard Arnault, the head of LVMH, that luxury goods giant, who ended up buying it.
So even the sale of his business had this air of like high stakes and intrigue.
Totally. And what's really interesting is that even when you're talking about billions of dollars, Feeney stuck to his frugal habits. He insisted on cash transactions, avoided debt, and stayed away from those complex financial instruments that a lot of people in his position use.
So he was applying those same down-to-earth principles even in these massive business deals.
Yeah, he was. But like I said, the sale meant that he couldn't operate in the shadows anymore.
Right.
His philanthropic activities, they were out in the open. And the media, well, they went crazy. I mean, can you imagine the headline?
Secret billionaire gives away fortune, something like that.
Exactly. It must have been overwhelming for someone who had spent decades avoiding that kind of attention.
I bet. So his cover was blown, his anonymity was gone, but his story doesn't end there, right? What did he do next?
Well, with his identity revealed, Feeney's focus shifted. There was another part of the world that had really captured his attention.
Oh, which part?
Vietnam. And this is where we'll pick things up in the next part of our deep dive. Vietnam. He saw a country that was, still reeling from the war. So much rebuilding that needed to happen. Development was just crucial there.
It's a part of the world that had seen so much turmoil, so much suffering. It makes sense that someone like Feeney, with his resources and his commitment to making a difference, would be drawn to that kind of challenge.
Yeah, definitely. But it wasn't just about a general sense of wanting to help. O'Clery makes it clear that Feeney felt a very strong personal responsibility. He really believed that, the U.S. owed a debt to the Vietnamese people, because of the war, the devastation that it caused.
So it was deeper than just, oh, this country needs help. He felt a moral obligation to be a part of the solution.
Exactly. But he didn't just jump in, guns blazing. His approach to Vietnam was, it was measured. It was strategic.
So he didn't abandon that meticulous, detail-oriented approach that we saw in his earlier philanthropy.
Not at all. In fact, O'Clery explains how Feeney first partnered with this organization called the East Meets West Foundation. They were already doing great work in Vietnam on healthcare and development projects.
So he was looking for partners who were already established, who shared his values of efficiency and getting things done.
Exactly. And his initial contributions, they were actually relatively small. But as he saw their commitment, as he saw the impact they were having, his support grew. It grew significantly.
It's like he was testing the waters, making sure his investments were in the right place.
Yeah, exactly. It was like he was saying, show me what you can do, prove to me that you're effective, and then we'll talk. He was always looking for tangible results.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like he was applying that venture capital mindset to his giving, right? Funding the most promising ventures and then scaling up as they proved successful.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. He was a philanthropist, but he was also a shrewd investor, always looking for the best return on his investment. But in this case, the return was measured in positive change. And, It wasn't just about the money. Feeney was personally involved. He traveled to Vietnam, visited project sites, met with people.
So even though he couldn't maintain the same level of secrecy as before, he was still very hands-on.
Oh, yeah. He was there on the ground, getting a first-hand look at the impact his donations were having. O'Clery actually shares this funny anecdote about Feeney being obsessed with the quality of the elevators in a new hospital they were building.
Really? Elevators?
Yeah. He wanted to make sure they were top-notch, reliable. He was thinking about the patients, the staff, everyone who would be using those elevators every day.
It shows that he cared about the details, the practical things that really make a difference in people's lives. It wasn't just about the big picture, the grand gestures. He was invested in the nuts and bolts of making things better.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that even though his profile was higher in Vietnam compared to, say, his work in Ireland, he still managed to keep a pretty low profile. O'Clery says that a lot of people didn't even recognize him, despite the fact that he was funding all these huge projects.
So he wasn't seeking the limelight, even though he was operating on a much larger scale. It really speaks to his genuine desire to make a difference without needing any personal recognition for it.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that Feeney's approach wasn't just about, like, building stuff. It wasn't just about physical infrastructure. It was about empowering the Vietnamese people to create a better future for themselves.
So it was about more than just providing aid. It was about giving them the tools and the resources to become self-sufficient.
Exactly. He understood that real, lasting change comes from within. It's about empowering communities to take control of their own destinies. And that brings us to this bigger idea of Feeney's philanthropic legacy. He was a real pioneer of this concept of giving while living.
Giving while living. It sounds like he was challenging that traditional idea of, amassing a fortune and then leaving it all to charity in your will.
That's right. He didn't believe in hoarding wealth, or waiting until you were gone to make a difference. He wanted to see the impact of his giving during his lifetime. He wanted to be a part of the change he was creating. He was a real visionary, wasn't he? I mean, think about it. Giving away your fortune while you're still alive to see the impact. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It really challenges those traditional notions of philanthropy, doesn't it? The whole idea of establishing foundations or leaving money in your will. Feeney was all about immediate action, addressing the world's problems, while he still could.
And it really makes you think about, like, the purpose of wealth, right?
Yeah.
Is it meant to be accumulated and passed down? Or is there a greater responsibility to use it for good, to make a difference while you can?
It's a big question, and Feeney's story definitely provides a different perspective. It pushes us to think beyond those conventional ideas.
It does, and it's not just about the money, right?
Mm.
I mean, Feeney spent decades working quietly behind the scenes. He wasn't looking for recognition or awards. He was just committed to making things better.
Yeah, and that's a powerful lesson, too. Real change doesn't always require those grand gestures or public displays. Sometimes the most impactful work happens quietly, without fanfare.
Exactly. It's about finding what you're passionate about, what you believe in, and then committing yourself to making a difference however you can.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Chuck Feeney, we wanted to leave you with something to think about. Imagine, just for a second, that you were in Feeney's shoes. You had the resources to make a real tangible impact on the world. Would you follow his path? Would you embrace anonymity, working behind the scenes to make a difference?
Or would you choose a more public role,
Yeah.
using your platform to inspire others and maybe even, like, encourage more giving? This is a tough question.
It is. There's something appealing about that idea of being a silent force for good, right? No ego, no need for recognition, just pure impact.
It's a compelling idea. But there's also something to be said for using your influence, your visibility, to shine a light on important causes and motivate others to get involved.
That's true. I mean, look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example. They've done incredible work, and their high profile has definitely helped to raise awareness and inspire others to give.
Yeah, you're right. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. It really comes down to personal values and how you believe you can best contribute to making the world a better place.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong approach. But what Chuck Feeney's story shows us is that we all have the potential to make a difference, regardless of the path we choose.
And his life, it's such a powerful example of what can happen when you combine strategic thinking, unwavering commitment, and a genuine desire to leave the world a little bit better than you found it.
Well said. And if you're feeling inspired to learn more about Chuck Feeney and the work of the Atlantic Philanthropies, we'll be sure to include some links in the show notes for you.
And hey, if you ever find yourself in Dublin, maybe take a stroll through the Chuck Feeney Plaza at Dublin City University. It's a rare public acknowledgement of this remarkable man and all that he's done.
It's a great way to kind of connect with his legacy and reflect on the impact one person can have.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Chuck Feeney. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we did.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep making a difference in your own way.